So last year, I backed the Zendure Supertank over at Kickstarter, and I was super excited to receive it because this is the most powerful power bank that I've ever owned, and until today, I'm still really loving it because of its charging capabilities. So Zendure sent me their Supertank Pro, which arrived in the office a couple of days, and this is still on Kickstarter right now, so it hasn't been delivered to the backers yet, but I've already got a unit of the Supertank Pro, and I'm going to check this out today, as well as the Zendure Superport S4, which is actually sold together as a bundle because you need a GAN charger, a 100-watt charger, to charge this as well. And it's great that they're doing a bundle this time. So in today's video, we are going to find out how well the Zendure Supertank Pro works on my devices right here. So I have the Dell XPS 15, the 2020 model. We have the Pocophone X3 NFC, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and finally the Galaxy Note 10 Plus. Now, before we get to the Supertank Pro, let's just talk briefly about the Superport S4. Now, this is a really nice charger. As you can see, the design is pretty much like the Supertank, which has this Rimowa-like texture. I call that the Rimowa luggage design, and it's a really nice travel adapter. It's pretty small, it's light as compared to the Hyperjuice, which I actually reviewed a couple of months back. It actually feels a lot smaller, and this one has a slightly higher output at 108 watts as compared to the Hyperjuice's 100 watts. So you get 3 USB-C ports over here. The first one, of course, charges the Zendure Supertank at 100 watts, and the second one is a PPC port which supports Samsung's fast PPS 5A charging, and the third one is a normal Quick Charge 3.0 standard, and the last one, of course, it also supports a Quick Charge 3.0 standard. Now, you do actually get an adapter, a couple of them. It's inside a white box which is not on the table, but you do get a couple of travel adapters in the box when you back for this. So it already has a 2-pin US prong, so if you are a US customer, you can just plug it into your wall socket and start using it. Let's start talking about both these super tanks. So they are very heavy power banks. So if you look at the design of the Supertank Pro, it actually looks way simpler than the Supertank. And if you look at the size, it is actually slightly larger than the Supertank. And the thing is that even though it is larger in terms of size, the battery size is not as huge as this. It's slightly smaller, but it is still pretty huge. Now, this thing has a 26,800 mAh battery inside as compared to the Zendure Supertank. It has a 27,000 mAh battery inside. So it's just a few hundred, it's just 200 mAh of difference. So it isn't going to make a lot of difference when it comes to both their endurances. Now, of course, they do have major differences in terms of features. Now, on the Supertank Pro, like I mentioned earlier, you get this OLED display here that shows you the charging current of the ports, which is actually pretty useful if you want to know if your device is charging efficiently. So all you need to do is to start plugging in the cables into one of the ports and the other end to your device, and you can finally see the charging current running on, and it's really interesting to find out how efficient this thing charges your device. So not all 4 ports work the same way. The first 2 ports actually work as the 100 watt. Each of them support a 100 watt output. It's just that the first port actually supports PD 3.0 and QC 3.0 standards, and the second port supports PPS 5A on top of the other 2 standards that I mentioned earlier, and the rest of the 2 ports supports 18 watts of fast charging speed. Now, if you're wondering, oh my god, I do not have another port to plug in my full-size USB cable, not to worry about that. Zendure actually included an adapter right here that you can actually just plug it into this port, and you can just plug your standard USB cable to charge your device. And also, Zendure provides a eMark USB-C to C cable out of the box, and that's really kind of them. But unfortunately, it doesn't come with a hard case that came with my Supertank last year. Alright, now let's do the charging test on the Supertank Pro. As you can see right now, I'm actually charging up my Supertank Pro using the old Supertank, which also supports a 100 watt output. And here you go, this is the input charging wattage right now. It is at 101 watts right now. So you get a battery indicator here with 2 lightnings, which shows that it is actually fast charging and the duration that is needed to fully charge those Supertank Pro. Let's take out the USB-C cable from the Supertank and charge other devices. I now have the Supertank Pro charging my Dell XPS 15. As you can see, there's a message over here that says that I'm using an undersized adapter, which is actually fine because 90 watts of charging is pretty sufficient if you are not doing some heavy stuff on the XPS 15. And according to the power wattage over here, it says that it is charging at 85.7 watts. So the one thing that I find a little weird about the Supertank Pro, just like my Supertank, is that when you actually have a USB-C to Lightning cable plugged in to the USB-C port here, the charging wattage immediately changes even without plugging the Lightning cable into any device. So we're just going to plug in the USB-C cable over here, and you can immediately see that it stops charging, by the way, and it changes into an input source for this one because it's using the laptop's USB-C port to charge up the device. And you can see that it just changes everything even though you don't have anything plugged into the Lightning cable. So it must be some circuit protection of the USB-C to Lightning cable that stops the existing charging wattage. Alright, now we have all 4 ports used up, and let's find out the maximum output when it is charging these 4 devices at the same time. So the first port is charging the Dell XPS 15 and it is running at 58.9 watts. And the second port, it is charging the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, which supports up to 25 watts of PPS fast charge. And we are looking at a 18.3 output right now. And the third output, which is using a standard full-size USB cable to charge up the Pocophone Poco X3 NFC. We are running at 5 watts, which is actually pretty slow. And the last part is the Lightning to USB-C cable, where we are charging the iPhone 11 Pro Max at 12.6 watts. So the total output that we are getting right here is about 93 to 94 watts, which is barely even the 138 total output as claimed by Zendure out there. But this is because the Powerbank actually determines the wattage that is required by all the 4 devices to ensure that there isn't any overcharging happening. Even though the Supertank Pro is charging all 4 devices at the same time, it isn't uncomfortable to hold. It does feel a little warm, but it's not uncomfortable to the touch. So after several tests, you can see that the Supertank Pro is really doing its job really well in charging multiple devices without getting overheated. And what I'm really impressed is that it actually has this really nice OLED display that shows you the charging current so that you know what kind of current that the charger is actually outputting. So after several tests, you can see that the Supertank Pro is actually a super capable power bank at charging multiple devices. And not forget to mention that the Supertank Pro is actually the first power bank in the whole wide world to be firmware upgradable, which means if there are any fast charging standards that comes up, Zendure simply releases a firmware and you can plug it into your computer and upgrade the firmware of this device to support the latest fast charging standards. So at this point of time, the Zendure Supertank Pro is available on Kickstarter. They have already exceeded their pledge. It is now at $574,000 US out of their initial $50,000 pledge. That's actually great. And to back this project, you still have an early bird deal at $149 US, which is 40% off its retail price tag. And if you add on $69, you will be able to get the Superport S4 together with the Zendure Supertank Pro. If you own multiple Type-C devices and you would like to charge them at high speed while on the go, this is it. This is a really worthy investment. I could vouch for that because I've been personally using the Supertank for about a year already and it hasn't given me any problems since. So this has been a quick look at the Zendure Supertank Pro. I would like to give a shout out to Zendure for sending these things over to our office all the way from the US. I really thank them for that. So that's pretty much for today's video. Let me know your thoughts, and if you have any questions about the Zendure Supertank Pro, do leave them in the comment section down below and I will reply them when I can. I will see you in our next video.